because you always just got to attack it when like defending.
I think they need, like,
the World Cup is over. Football won. Congratulations to Spain for winning the 2026 edition of this expanded World Cup. So I thought, let me make a video with my overall thoughts, and I implore you lot to share yours. Now, going into the World Cup, I was pessimistic in it. We all know the off-the-field issues that many people face, primarily going to America. And you know what? Big up America, big up Canada, big up Mexico for, hosting of this World Cup. Again, the off-field issues, how Iran was treated, logistics around getting to the games, all of those things in the pre-build up to the World Cup. And I would also say another thing that peed me off about the World Cup is football's global, is for everybody. Yeah. So that's one thing. But and again, I'm not doing all of that stuff, but the Americanization of this sport, people, like the halftime show was shit, the hydration breaks. Don't get twisted. I recognize sometimes the hydration breaks are needed, but you get where I'm going. It was beautiful because of the way it ended for Argentina. Big up Messi. My heart bled for Lionel Messi and my old boy Emi Martinez. But the reality is, when you make yourselves the pantomime villains like Argentina, everybody's preying on your downfall. And it was sweet. It was sweet. Stinky. No shots. Yeah, they went down to 10 men, but no shots on target, sitting back and absorbing pressure. We all knew Argentina versus Spain. Many are talking points, but the actual football, it weren't really going to be there. Spain are deserved winners. On another day, they probably would have been kicking themselves that they didn't score in normal time. Nico Williams, I thought that might bite you on the arse. And it's sad that, for Argentina and Lionel Messi, for the defending, or was the defending champions, for it to be marred by, the fouling, the dirty antics, in the final, more punches than obviously shots on target. In life, you have to stay humble. Enzo Fernandez and his brothers' antics when they dumped out England. Bet they're not doing that now. Bet there's no chance now, etc., etc. For Spain, ridiculous. Spain, we know about their ethos, and it must be a gases if you're Spain. It'd be interesting to do like the Spain team that won the World Cup versus this current Spain team that won the World Cup. What players would get in? Because the majority would be, the Casillas and Ramos and Iniesta and Xavi and all those kind of guys there. I think Yamal could get in. But, if you're Rodri, if you're Kobasi, if you're Yamal, just to be, you've done it, Mikel Merino, Zubamendi, David Raya, to do the same thing that the people before you have done is amazing. And credit to Spain, credit to their manager. It's a great story of how Spain developed talents and the ethos and all of that things. And what I mean by that is, we know how Spain are. Tiki-taka, death by 1,000 passes. They'll play the same way, false nines. I would say in my lifetime now, like more so with the Euros in 2024 to now, they're getting them, let's have it right, them icy free wingers. They're the strong 1v1 players of a sort. They've always had that. But the Nico Williams and the Lamine Yamal to go with the many technical midfielders they've got, the defensive ethos they've got. Spain ain't lost in like 38 games. I think they only conceded 1 goal in this World Cup. Great individual performances. Kobasi, for me, I don't really rate Pedro Puro like that, but in a Spanish shirt, stood up to be counted. Cucurella stood up to be counted. Rodri would be the player for me. I think he played out of his skin, considering he came into this in not the best health. And you look at their coach, De La Fuente, I think he's achieved stuff at under 19s level, 21s level, managed them at the Olympics, obviously has won 2 Euros and a World Cup. You look at the players they bring through, the players of, there's going to be a bit of a changing of a guard, of course, but Kobasi, Yamal, Gavi, Pedri, Nico Williams, Demka, and other players will come up, and there's obviously other players in around the squad, but good age profile. So Spain deserved it. There were a lot of people's favorites. So yeah, credit to Spain and everything they've done. The French will be disappointed as to how it ended against France, because I think they got stage fright, but I think, it was a joy to watch Elise and Mbappe when they were on song. This World Cup had everything, man. It had great bangers, people scoring volleys, people scoring long ranges. I think we're all accustomed to the 85th to the 90th minute daggers. I would say as well, one thing I'd say, the African nations and, Curacao and Cape Verde and Haiti, the African/Caribbean nations and whatnot, Morocco, Egypt, Cape Verde, all them kind of nations there, yeah. Going into this World Cup, there was all this, they're going to bring the quality down. If anything, beyond the obvious, respectfully, the bigger nations and their quality is going to shine through to the latter stages. But the smaller nations made it difficult for the bigger nations, and they all gave a good account of the Congo as well, great account of themselves, and shown that they're up to speed tactically, technically, and they didn't let the quality down. Like, considering it was an expanded World Cup, I think it was amazing. The only criticism I can have of this World Cup is for someone in England, it weren't kind. But even the 2 a.m. fixtures, they were great. You know, I think all the big players came out to play, man. If I'm honest, man, I think Rodri came to the party, Haaland, Mbappe, Elise, Lionel Messi, you know, the Jude Bellingham, Declan Rice, Bukayo in the minutes he played. You know, Yamal came into this injured, so it weren't really the best of tournaments from him personally. But I feel there was a lot of stars that, you know, typically the stars that they rate for the World Cup, they failed to deliver. I think they stood up. I think it showed how important systems are. I always push back here, and I say, when people say this whole system player and system striker, and I agree with it. But I do think, thinking logically, unless you're Lionel Messi, and obviously nobody's of that ilk, but people like Lionel Messi and that kind of caliber of player, every player is a system player. Surely every player, because everyone's a human being. You know, there's going to be a system that makes you thrive more, that hides what you're bad at and enhances what you're good at. And likewise, you see Vitaya and all of them, man, look out of place in the Portuguese side. And there's plenty of other examples. So I think it showed that, you know, individual quality will always make the difference. But, you know, what we see at club level, systemic football, it's you know, it's being married. There was a lot of entertaining matches. Entertainment is subjective, because you could say Argentina versus Spain weren't entertaining. Of course, I'm like a bipolar football fan. I like goals, assists, controversy, end-to-end stuff, all of that. But I'm also a tactical nerd. So what I mean by that is the final. Obviously, the red card came late, but it was really just Spain on top of them. And I like the way Spain move it left to right. Can't go forward, go back, waiting for the perfect opening, the way they set up off the ball and create overloads, the way they always are available for a pass. So that was great. Obviously, I rate Brazil. You can see it. We gave a shit account of ourselves. So, yeah, man, I think this World Cup had everything, man. I think it had individual qualities, great systemic systems and collective team displays, had heartbreak, had drama. It had everything. It was a very good World Cup, man, if I'm completely honest with you, man. It had everything. Who would I give player of the World Cup to? I think it's tied for 3 players, man. A part of me wants to say Ferran Torres, because he obviously, you know, started the Argentina tears, innit? But I want to say him. Obviously, I think Elise flattered to deceive in the last 2 games that that France played. And you know what? And I don't even know what would be the most entertaining game, because there's many in it. Cape Verde versus Argentina was good. I think Egypt versus Argentina was good. There's, you know, Congo versus England. My heart was all around the place. There was many, but I do think France, England. If I'm completely honest with you. So, yeah, man, I even forgot the point I was making. But yeah, I just think it was a good World Cup, man. I was pessimistic going into it. It took a minute for me to grow into it. The only criticism I can have is, you know, I think Argentina got away with murder. And I think, you know, the hydration breaks and the halftime shows. But other than that, we had individual displays, tactical displays, you know, even had some people announcing themselves to the world, you know, the Cape Verde goalkeeper, the lad who plays for Ivory Coast in centre mid. You know, I do like the Norwegian left wing. I can't pronounce his name for the life of me. He scored the cross-goal against England. You know, even that in England was dramatic, people. But yeah, man, Spain was many people's favorites. I do think, you know, the people that you saw in the latter stages, because I didn't subscribe to it, but naturally I want it to happen. People were saying England can get to the latter stages. People did have France as favorites. People were saying, yo, Messi, Argentina. People do have Spain. And to be honest, I think I said this in my preview. When you look at like the people who their money would be on, you know, obviously we all know in today's day and age, unfortunately, Brazil shit, but going into a World Cup, man, we'll say Brazil, Argentina, Spain, you know, in recent years, England, France, like all of them kind of nations there, yeah. I think people had Spain, but if we're just judging them against each other, I do think people played down, maybe even myself, underrated Spain's chances of actually doing that. Not because they're bad, it just felt like they weren't. I don't know, man. You look at France, you think of Mbappe, you think of Yamal, you know, Messi, obviously with Argentina. England, there's, you know, Jude Bellingham at Real Madrid and all of these kind of things. Spain have got stars. They've got Yamal and all of that, but they weren't really in the spotlight, if that makes sense to you. Like they just done their business, man, and everything Luis de la Fuente did worked, man. So yeah, we had goals, we had drama, we had controversy, we had red cards, we had inconsistency. You know, we had the whole Balogun penalty and then red card and then not given. You know, we man are getting sent off for this. You know, big up to all my Arsenal players who obviously were out there. I think we had 14, 15 selected, and then Timber came out. You know, 3 of them have won the World Cup. You know, the lowest point of the World Cup beyond the obvious of wanting England or Brazil to do it has to be, you know, Saliba going down. Highlight of the World Cup was for me seeing Saka get a hat trick and Marino lift it. Marino, even the legend killer, you know, Mbappe. I'm being a bit silly, but Mbappe try to step to him, done. Ronaldo try to step to him, World Cup journey over, buddy. Messi the same. So Mikel Marino, double M, the Undertaker, man. So yeah, man, I'm happy for them. Spain deserved it in it, and I don't want the World Cup to end now. You know, like I've become accustomed to this, and it's time where we're gonna focus on club football. And even now I remember my point. Going back to systemic football and systems and that, Cucurella hasn't looked like what he looked like for Spain, for Chelsea in a hot minute. Pedro Puro the same. Pedro Puro had a good game, a good tournament, as did Spence. I don't know who I would do for my team of the tournament, people. Like off the top of my head, there's probably a couple other players that I'm gonna miss out. But off the top of my head, I'd go with the Cape Verde lad in goal, the Cape Verde keeper. I'd go with him. Personally, I'd go Saliba and Kabasi as the centre halves. I'll go Pedro Puro and Cucurella as the fullbacks in central midfield. Obviously, just to make an 11. I know they all weren't playing there, but in central midfield, I would probably go Rodri, Jude Bellingham, Lionel Messi in the 10. On the right, just for the purposes of getting in the team, I would go Elise off the right, Mbappe off the left, and I'd have to go for Haaland through the middle. And obviously, you know, I would always credit the Arsenal boys. On my bench, Marino, Rice, Bukayo Saka. To be fair, what's his name? The left wing I was talking about from Norway. A couple of the Ivory Coast lads. You know, there's many players, man. You can make a couple team of the tournaments if that makes sense. Who would be my players I enjoyed watching? Best moment for me would be Bukayo. Players I think for me, like players of the tournament, like if I had to pick a player of the tournament, I'd have to say Elise. Like I know he kind of fell off in the last two games, but I think he was a joy to watch when it was in his pomp. Killing Mbappe the same. You could say Lionel Messi if I'm brutally honest, and I would say if I had to pick a left field choice, I would say Rodri. If I'm brutally honest, I would say big up Haaland. I would say Rodri. Also on my bench, Kane. So yeah, I think all the stars stood up. I think it was a good tournament, man, and it just shows that unfortunately football mirrors society in it, and there was division throughout this World Cup. It was marred by incidences, primarily Argentina, but this is why we love football, man. It don't care if you're black, white, whatever faith, wherever you are, in whatever corner of the world, we can come together and just celebrate. And I do think it was marred by that. But it's definitely been a better World Cup than a lot of us thought going into, you know, big up Canada, who had their moments, big up Mexico as well, gave us some moments. And obviously America, it was primarily focused around that. Even America, purely from a footballing point of view, great account of themselves. So, yeah, man, it was a good World Cup. It definitely is one of the best I've ever seen, people, if I'm honest with you. It is. And I think I did say this in 2022. Now, of my lifetime, I'm 31, so... yeah, 98, not really there, 3 years of age. 2002, nostalgic. That's always going to be me. You know, I think 2002 is my favorite one because that was one of my happiest footballing memories. 06, it felt like watching. Do you not remember Masters football? It felt like watching Masters football, like when players are kind of falling off a bit, getting towards the end of their careers. The Henrys, the Ronaldos, the Zidanes. Obviously, that final. I think that was a brilliant World Cup. 2010, it was more just about Spain for me. I don't think I enjoyed it in its whole totality. 2014, obviously, that's when Brazil got bullied in it and Germany did their thing. I can't say I enjoyed that as much to its whole totality. 2018, I think it was more France, if that makes sense. Like, there was above everybody else. 2022, I think, was very good, you know. I think it was, and especially the final, I think it was very good. So for me, I would still have 02. Probably, you know, if I'm honest and I remove nostalgia, 2002 would be the best World Cup for me. Then it would probably be 2022. Then it would probably be, you know, 2026, if I'm brutally honest, man. So, yeah, man, I want 2030 to hurry up, if I'm honest with you. And it's weird whenever a World Cup comes around, innit? I know it's every 4 years, but I can still vividly remember where I was as a person in 2022, life at 2022 and whatnot. And then 4 years, like, do you ever do that? Like, you remember where you was 4 years, like, for example, 2026, you remember how life was at 2020 in 2022, how far you've come, and then 2030. So, yeah, man. And I think this World Cup was different in that, obviously, like I just said it earlier, Spain would, you know, tipped as one of the kind of favorites and things of that ilk, people. But I don't really feel like any of the bigger nations played to their maximum. I don't think Spain had to, if I'm honest. I think they had an ethos. They went out there, they played, they did what they needed to do. But what I mean, like, for example, 2022, you could see Argentina, but France were a level above everyone. You could see I keep saying the last time Spain won it, but the last time Spain won it, 2010, they were a level above everybody. France 2018, they were a level above everybody. There's obviously people that are a level above, but I don't really feel none of the bigger nations that no one was clear. I know every now and again people put the, you know, the dark horses of Portugal. I don't quite get behind that. I think Ronaldo needed to be on the bench. Belgium, big up Trossard for his performances, but that was always going to be a given. I'd say one disappointing team, low key, and we're talking about dark horses, would have been Turkey, if I'm honest with you. But there were some fantastic moments, man. Like when Mexico scored, when Bosnia scored, Carousel, Cape Verde, you know, big up Congo for getting to the World Cup. Jamaica, I'm vexed with you. Big up Congo, but we shouldn't have even been in a scenario to play them in the playoffs. We should have done what we needed to do, man. So, yeah, man, Bosnia had their moments as well. Lovely to see, you know, Egypt and Morocco. You know, there was plenty of good talking points and people giving a good account of themselves, man, individually and collectively, man. So, yeah, everybody knows I was very pessimistic. I was actually bored and uninspired in the early stages of this World Cup, but it's not how it's like a season, isn't it? It's not how it starts, it's how it ends. But yeah, the World Cup's done. I'm sure everyone's putting their club cap back on and now focusing on that.